Arham grew up near the sea, and from the time he was a small boy, he felt a strong connection to the ocean. His house was close enough to the coast that he could hear the waves at night and see the outlines of large military ships when the sun was rising. Those early mornings were his favorite moments. He would sit on a rock, hugging his knees, and stare at those giant shapes moving in the water. Most children his age were interested in cartoons or games, but Arham's heart was somewhere else. He was fascinated by anything that had engines, steel, and power. The sight of a warship, even from far away, filled him with excitement and a deep sense of curiosity as he grew older. This curiosity turned into a strong passion. He wanted to understand how these massive ships were built, how they floated, and why they looked so different from ships belonging to other countries that he saw on television or in magazines. He noticed something even as a child. Human-built warships always looked heavier, thicker, and more solid compared to the sleek and sharp designs he saw in pictures of foreign fleets. He didn't fully understand the reason, but it stayed in his mind like a puzzle he wanted to solve one day. Arham's father worked as a mechanic in a small shipyard. Sometimes he would take Arham along, and the boy would watch men working with huge tools, welding metal plates, and checking engines the size of rooms. The smell of oil and metal became familiar to him. He started asking questions, too many questions sometimes, but his father was patient and always tried to give him answers. Those days in the shipyard planted the first seeds of knowledge in Arham's mind. He began to see ships not just as large objects, but as complex creations that needed strength, planning, and a purpose. When Arham finished school, he already knew what he wanted to do. He wanted to become a military engineer, someone who understood ships from the inside out. He dreamed of designing vessels that could survive any challenge. To reach that goal, he worked very hard and earned a scholarship to study naval engineering. University life opened a new world for him. He learned about the history of shipbuilding, ocean dynamics, materials, and technologies used by different nations. He also learned that ships were not just about power, they were about philosophy. Every country designed its ships based on its beliefs, geography, risks, and past experiences. This was where Arham first noticed a major difference. While many advanced nations were moving toward lighter, faster, and more flexible ship designs, humans kept building ships that seemed almost old-fashioned in comparison. Thicker armor, heavier frames, and engines designed to handle extreme stress. He wondered why humans didn't follow global trends. Why did they continue to build what others jokingly called floating bunkers? Arham didn't think too much of it until he joined an international defense program after graduation. This was a place where engineers, scientists, and military officers from many countries worked together. They shared ideas, tested theories, and compared technologies. For the first time, Arham wasn't just reading about foreign ship designs, he was standing in front of them, touching them, studying them closely. He realized how different human ships truly were. Foreign vessels looked elegant, almost like works of art. Their metal was thinner, their shapes were sharper, and their internal systems were designed to save weight wherever possible. In contrast, human ships were built like steel mountains. Every corner felt reinforced, every room seemed heavier than necessary, and every system had backups for the backups. It was as if the ships were prepared for disasters that other nations didn't believe would ever happen. This difference became even clearer during a large meeting where engineers from different countries presented their upcoming fleet upgrades. One foreign commander, while smiling politely, pointed at the blueprint of a new human-built vessel and said, "That's not a ship, that's a moving fortress." There was laughter in the room, but it wasn't unkind laughter. It was amusement mixed with confusion. Why would humans build something so massive in an age where speed and precision mattered more than brute strength? Arham felt a small sting hearing that comment, but he couldn't deny the truth in it. The human ship did look like a fortress. Thick armor, reinforced corners, deep hull, compartments designed to seal themselves in emergencies, and engines capable of running even if major sections were damaged. There was nothing sleek about it. It looked like it was made for war, storms, and unpredictable chaos. This moment changed something inside him. He wanted to understand the reason behind this design philosophy. It couldn't simply be tradition or stubbornness. There had to be real historical reasons, real experiences that shaped this approach. So Arham began researching the history of human naval disasters, wars, sea accidents, and environmental challenges. He discovered that over centuries, humans had faced some of the harshest oceans and deadliest conflicts. They had seen ships torn apart by storms, attacked unexpectedly, or damaged during long missions. Each disaster had taught them something. Each failure had pushed them to build stronger next time. Arham realized that human shipbuilding wasn't about looking tough, it was about being prepared. Prepared for storms that came without warning. Prepared for enemy attacks that targeted weak points. Prepared for mechanical failures that could happen far from home. Humans built ships that could survive the impossible because they had lived through the impossible many times in history. This understanding made him admire human engineering even more. He felt proud to be part of a legacy built on resilience. But he also noticed something else. The international team did not understand or appreciate this philosophy. Many believed humans were wasting resources and slowing progress. They felt that lighter ships were more efficient and smarter for modern warfare. Arham saw the tension growing as discussions and debates became sharper. Still, he remained calm. He believed that one day, real experience would show the truth. He didn't expect it to happen so soon, but the world had a way of testing ideas at the most unexpected times. For now, Arham continued learning, observing, and absorbing everything around him. Each day deepened his understanding of why human warships were built the way they were. He didn't know that a moment was coming, a moment when the whole world would see the value in those massive designs. But at this stage, his journey was simply about curiosity, discovery, and the growing realization that sometimes strength is not about looking beautiful or modern. Sometimes strength is about surviving when everything else breaks. Arham didn't know it yet, but he was about to witness a situation that would change the world's opinion forever. For now, he was just an engineer standing between two philosophies, one that trusted elegance, and one that trusted endurance. And deep inside, he already felt which one would prove right when real danger arrived. Arham's real challenges began when he officially became part of the International Defense Program. At first, he thought it would simply be a place to learn and share ideas. But he quickly discovered that it was also a place where design philosophies clashed every single day. People from different countries came with their own traditions, strategies, and beliefs about how warships should be built. Arham realized that human engineers were already seen as different, even before they spoke a single word. Their designs were heavier, their calculations were stricter, and their safety margins were far higher than what other countries considered normal. One afternoon, Arham sat in a conference room surrounded by holographic ship models floating in the air. Engineers from multiple nations were presenting their ideas for the next generation of warships. Sleek, light, multi-purpose vessels filled the displays. Some designs looked almost too beautiful to be used in war-smooth surfaces. Elegant curves, and extremely thin hull layers, supported by advanced technology. Everyone applauded each other and praised the modern approach. Then came the turn of the human team. When the blueprint of the human-designed ship appeared, the room went silent for a moment. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't elegant. It was massive, blocky, and looked more like a floating fortress than a warship. The whole thickness was double that of most foreign ships. The internal structure was packed with layers of armor and reinforcement beams. Even the engine system looked overbuilt, with extra support frames that other engineers considered unnecessary weight. A few foreign engineers raised their eyebrows. Someone whispered, "Why so heavy?" Another laughed quietly and said, "This looks like it's preparing for the end of the world." And then, once again, someone jokingly said, "That's not a ship, it's a moving fortress." This time, the joke didn't feel friendly. Arham sat silently, feeling a mix of embarrassment and frustration. He knew the design had strong logic behind it. He knew why the ship needed such reinforcement. But he also knew the room was filled with people who valued speed and efficiency more than durability. They didn't understand the risks humans prepared for. They lived in calmer oceans, safer regions, and had not faced the chaos humans had endured in their history. The main challenge began when the fucking International Committee started questioning the design choices. They asked why the ship needed triple-layer hull plating, why so many emergency systems, why, to back up engines, why so much redundancy. In their eyes, the human ship was a waste of resources, too heavy, too slow, and too expensive. Arham's team tried to explain. They spoke about human experience with unpredictable seas and violent storms. They mentioned past wars where ships had taken damage but still fought back because of strong construction. They explained that humans built warships, not for perfect conditions, but for the worst conditions imaginable. But their words felt weak in front of engineers who had never witnessed such disasters themselves. As days passed, the pressure increased. Meetings became debates. Debates became arguments. Arham found himself defending human design again and again. He noticed the way foreign engineers looked at him, sometimes amused, sometimes irritated, and sometimes confused. To them, humans were overly cautious, stuck in old ideas, and afraid to accept modern trends. The rising challenge wasn't just technical, it was emotional. Arham felt as if his team was being judged not on their logic, but on their identity. Whenever they talked, the tone in the room shifted. People acted like human engineers were exaggerating dangers or inventing excuses to justify their heavy designs. It was exhausting to face such resistance every day. One day, Arham's supervisor, an older engineer named Commander Rahim, asked him to join a private meeting. The atmosphere was tense. Rahim sighed and explained that the International Committee was considering rejecting the human warship design completely. They believed it was too slow for modern warfare and not aligned with global standards. If the proposal was rejected, the human team would lose funding and influence in the program. Arham felt a sharp pain in his chest. Years of hard work, history, logic, and purpose all being dismissed because others didn't understand the philosophy behind it. Later that week, the committee arranged a special session where all teams had to defend their designs. Arham stood with his team as they presented data, simulations, and real-life examples of ships surviving catastrophic damage thanks to their reinforced structure. But the foreign engineers countered with their own data showing how lighter ships used advanced predictive systems to avoid danger instead of trying to survive it. The room was divided into two philosophies, one believing in avoiding danger, the other believing in enduring it. The debate only grew more heated when a foreign naval officer argued that human ships were too heavy to maneuver during combat. Arhem responded calmly, saying that humans believed a warship should be able to take a hit and still fight, not just avoid hits entirely. But his comments sparked murmurs across the room. Many disagreed openly. The human team felt drained. They had delivered facts, logic, and history, but it seemed like nothing was enough to change the minds of those who already saw their designs as outdated. Arhem walked back to his quarters feeling exhausted and unsure. For the first time, he wondered if the world was moving in a direction where strength and resilience were no longer valued. He feared that one day, lightweight designs would fail during a real emergency, and only then would people understand what humans had been trying to say. As weeks passed, the committee continued to delay the decision. Arhem felt the weight of uncertainty hanging over him. Every day, he joined discussions, simulations, and presentations trying to prove that the human warship design was not excessive, it was necessary. But convincing people who had never faced the storms humans had faced was like trying to explain fire to someone who had only ever known calm weather. The rising challenge became a test of patience and belief. Human engineers started doubting themselves. Some wondered whether they should change their design to satisfy the committee. Others believed that compromising would be a betrayal of everything they stood for. Arhem found himself caught in the middle. He respected foreign engineers, but he also knew they were underestimating real-world danger. Every night, he remembered the storms he had seen as a child, the powerful waves that shook even the strongest vessels. Those memories strengthened his resolve. The tension reached its peak when the international panel announced that they would conduct a massive joint naval exercise involving all participating nations. Every new ship design, including the human moving fortress, would be part of the test. The results of the exercise would influence the final decision. Arhem felt a spark of hope. He believed that real-life conditions would reveal the truth that endless debates couldn't if the human warship performed well. The committee would be forced to reconsider their doubts, but a part of him also felt nervous. Everyone would be watching. Failure would mean embarrassment and total rejection. Success could silence critics forever. The rising challenge had now transformed into something larger than just a technical disagreement. It became a question of identity, pride, experience, and survival. Arhem knew the upcoming test would determine not only the future of human shipbuilding, but also the world's understanding of why humans built things differently. And though he didn't say it aloud, Arhem felt deep inside that something big was coming. Something that would test not just the ships but the beliefs of everyone involved. The day of the joint naval exercise arrived with bright skies and calm water. It looked like a perfect day for testing new fleet designs. Dozens of ships from different nations lined up across the ocean, each one representing years of planning, engineering, and hope. Arhem stood on the deck of the human-built warship, the one everyone called the Moving Fortress. Its massive structure rose above the water like a steel mountain. To others, it looked old-fashioned. To Arhem, it looked ready for anything. The exercise began with basic maneuvers. Sleek foreign ships sliced through the water with impressive speed. Their hulls glided smoothly, and their engines hummed quietly. Many officers watching the live screens praised their performance. Some even joked that the human fortress looked like it was limping slowly behind the pack. Arhem felt a sting, but he stayed silent. He trusted the ship. So did his team. For the first few hours, everything went as planned. Ships tested communication systems, radar sensors, weapon simulations, and formation movements. Foreign vessels completed each task quickly. Their captains were proud. This was what they had trained for. The human ship, despite its slow speed, performed every task with stability and precision. Nothing shook it or confused its systems. But no one seemed impressed then. Just before noon, something unexpected happened. Weather satellites began detecting a strange formation over the distant horizon. At first it looked like normal clouds, but within minutes, warning alerts started appearing across every control room. The calm blue sky began to darken rapidly. Winds picked up, cold and sharp, slicing across the ocean's surface. The sea, which had been peaceful moments ago, began to churn violently. A sudden superstorm was forming faster and stronger than anything predicted. The international commanders tried to remain calm. They believed their advanced systems could respond and guide them to safety. But the storm was growing too quickly. Lightning cracked through the sky, thunder echoed across the fleet, and waves rose higher and higher. The lighter ships were the first to be hit. Strong winds slammed against their thin hulls, making them sway dangerously. High waves crashed over their decks, rattling their internal systems. One foreign vessel lost its main antenna. Another suffered engine instability. Pilots reported malfunctions in navigation systems. Within minutes, several ships began sending distress signals. The ocean turned violent. Water rose like dark towers, striking ships with massive force. Arhem held onto the railing as the human fortress began to shake, but unlike the other ships, it held firm. Every time a wave hit, the ship pushed back with its reinforced body, absorbing the impact like a giant shield. Foreign vessels tried to turn around and escape the storm's center, but their lightweight design worked against them. They were not built to withstand such random brutality. Their predictive systems failed because the storm wasn't behaving normally. It was chaotic, wild, and unpredictable. One ship tilted dangerously to the left. Another began taking water through cracked seams. The storm's force was tearing the ocean apart, and every weak spot in their designs was now exposed. Arham's heart raced as he heard radio calls. Engine down, we've lost control. Taking heavy damage, request immediate assistance. Foreign commanders who once argued confidently now sounded terrified. Their advanced, beautiful ships so quick, so efficient were struggling to survive. And then something extraordinary happened. The human warship, the massive fortress that others had mocked, turned directly into the heart of the storm. Instead of escaping, it pushed forward with steady determination. Its triple-layered hull took the shock of each wave. Its reinforced engines stayed stable despite the violent shaking. Its heavy weight, once seen as a flaw, now kept it from being tossed around like a toy. Arham watched the crew working calmly, switching to emergency protocols designed exactly for moments like this. Backup power systems activated. Watertight compartments sealed themselves. Every part of the ship functioned exactly as it was built, no hesitation, no confusion. In the thick of the chaos, a foreign vessel was moments away from capsizing. Its hull had cracked, and water was flooding in. The human ship moved close, using its size to block the strongest waves and give the smaller vessel a chance to stabilize. Another ship lost all electrical power, leaving it completely helpless. Once again, the fortress turned toward it, guiding emergency teams to assist. Ship after ship began relying on the human vessel for rescue. Arham heard the disbelief in their voices. How is that ship still stable? It's surviving the storm. It's helping everyone. Foreign officers who once laughed at the ship were now pleading for guidance. The human captain took command of the rescue operation calmly. His voice, steady and firm, coordinated the entire fleet. He directed damaged ships to position themselves near the fortress's shielded side. He instructed crews to deploy support drones and emergency cables. Every movement was precise, practiced, and effective. The storm grew even stronger. Waves 40 feet high crashed around them. Lightning struck the water, sending vibrations through the metal decks. But the fortress stood tall. Its design, built for the worst, finally showed its true purpose. Arham watched with awe as the ship moved through the chaos, like a warrior walking calmly through a battlefield. Every sensor stayed online. Every engine stayed functional. The massive weight that made it slow now made it unshakable. The armor that seemed excessive now saved lives. The backup systems, once called wasteful, now kept the ship alive when others had gone dark. Foreign vessels continued to rely on the human ship as their only hope. Several crews were evacuated aboard it. Medical teams worked tirelessly to treat injured sailors. Broken ships were tied to its sides to prevent them from drifting. The fortress became the center of survival. Hours passed before the storm finally began to weaken. Winds slowed. Waves softened. The dark sky turned lighter. When the danger had passed, the ocean was filled with battered vessels, some barely afloat, others completely silent. But one ship remained strong and almost unharmed. The human-built moving fortress. Silence fell across the fleet as everyone looked at it, floating steadily in the calm after the storm. Arham stood on the deck soaking wet, exhausted but filled with pride. He realized he had witnessed something unforgettable, proof that strength built on history and experience was not old-fashioned at all. It was necessary. Foreign commanders who had once doubted everything now stared at the human ship with shock and respect. No one laughed anymore. No one questioned the weight, the armor, or the philosophy behind it. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. Arham knew that this moment would change everything. The storm had revealed what debates never could. When the world faced real danger, unpredictable, violent, unstoppable, the only thing that mattered was whether a ship could survive the impossible. And that day, only one ship did. The moving fortress had proven itself not through speeches, but through the courage and strength of its design. When the storm finally began to ease, the ocean looked like a battlefield. Pieces of broken equipment floated on the surface. Several ships were barely holding together, and many were completely silent, drifting without power. The sky was still heavy with clouds, but the violent winds had faded. In the middle of this chaos stood the human-built fortress, ship steady, strong, and shockingly intact. Its massive frame looked almost untouched compared to the battered foreign vessels around it. Inside the command room, Arham felt drained but focused. He had spent hours helping crews stabilize critical systems, guide damaged ships, and rescue teams trapped in failing compartments. His hands were trembling from exhaustion, but his heart was full of determination. The storm might have weakened, but the rescue operation had only begun. The human captain stood tall, as calm as ever. His voice echoed through the communication channels, guiding every step of the recovery. He didn't shout or panic. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had faced storms before, someone who understood exactly why their ship had been built like a fortress. His orders were clear. Support ship, Bravo. Move survivors to our starboard side. Tow line teams, prepare lines for the drifting cruiser. Medical crew, stand by for mass casualty intake. All stations, continue scanning for missing crew. Foreign commanders, who earlier questioned every design choice, now waited eagerly for his instructions. Their pride had been washed away by the storm. Now, they looked to the human ship for leadership because it was the only vessel still capable of thinking beyond its own survival. Arham joined a rescue team, heading toward a heavily damaged foreign ship. The smaller vessel had lost nearly everything. Its engines were dead. Its hull had deep cracks, and water had flooded several compartments. When Arham boarded it, he saw exhausted sailors clinging to hope, shivering, injured, and terrified. The moment they saw the human rescue team approaching, many broke down in relief. They kept repeating the same words. You came. Thank you. We thought we were done. Arham guided them back to the fortress where medical units worked tirelessly. Doctors treated wounds, cleaned cuts, and wrapped broken arms. They used every available bed and even converted storage rooms into emergency medical centers. The fortress was large enough to take in hundreds of sailors, and its stable structure allowed medical teams to work without fear of sudden damage or power loss. Meanwhile, the technical crew continued towing to drifting vessels. The strong engines of the fortress pulled them safely through the calmer waters. Every minute, the ship proved again why it had been designed with so much power and reinforcement. Inside the committee's temporary control center now completely shaken by the storm, foreign engineers watched live footage of the fortress in action. They saw how its weight stabilized it. They saw how its armor resisted the worst waves. They saw how its backup systems activated when others had failed. Most importantly, they saw how it had become the central hub for rescue and coordination. Whispers filled the room. Now I understand why they built it like that. They knew storms could be this powerful. Their design just saved the entire fleet. The same people who laughed earlier now spoke with genuine respect. As the rescue mission continued, the sun slowly peeked through the clouds, lighting up the damaged ocean. Hours passed before the last missing crew member was found and brought aboard the fortress. The human ship had successfully saved every life it could, something that would have been impossible for lighter ships struggling for survival. Once the situation became fully stable, and all damaged vessels were secured, the international fleet slowly began moving back toward the main base. Of course, most ships could not travel on their own anymore. The fortress and a few surviving support vessels had to tow them. It was a long journey back, but it was safe. During this return trip, the true resolution began to unfold. Foreign commanders started visiting the fortress personally to thank the crew. They shook hands with engineers, hugged sailors, and offered sincere apologies for their earlier doubts. Many said things like, "We misjudged your design. Your ship saved us. Now we understand why humans build differently." For the first time, Arham saw unity in the fleet. There were no debates, no arguments about design philosophies, only gratitude and recognition. Back at the main naval base, the entire international committee gathered to hold an emergency meeting. The hall was packed with officers, engineers, and scientists. Everyone silently waited for the final report on the storm incident. Screens showed footage of the damaged ships, the rescue operations, and the fortress leading the entire mission. When the head of the committee spoke, his voice was filled with seriousness. We have witnessed the strength of human engineering. We have seen a ship survive what should have been impossible. We have seen it protect others when they could not protect themselves. He turned toward Arham's team. Your design was not outdated. It was not excessive. It was prepared. The room filled with nods and murmurs of agreement. The committee officially announced that the human warship design had passed every expectation and that elements of its structure would be studied and integrated into future global projects. This was not just approval, it was a complete shift in perspective. Human engineers, once seen as overly cautious, were now viewed as visionaries. After the meeting, Arham walked alone along the dock, watching the fortress resting peacefully in the water. The same ship that had been mocked before the exercise now stood as a symbol of survival and wisdom. He remembered every laugh, every doubt, every sarcastic comment from before. But now, those voices were silent. Instead, he heard praise, respect, and gratitude. The resolution wasn't dramatic or loud. It was calm, steady, and deeply meaningful, just like the fortress itself. Arham felt proud not just for the ship's success, but for the philosophy behind it. Humans built differently because they understood something the world had forgotten. Danger doesn't warn you before arriving. Storms don't follow predictions. War doesn't wait for perfect conditions. Strength must come from preparation, not hope. That as Arham placed his hand on the cold steel of the fortress hull, he whispered softly to himself, remembering the early days when he was criticized and doubted, "You were right all along." The ship didn't respond, of course. It just floated there quietly, solid, unshaken, and ready for whatever came next, just as it was built to be. When the international fleet finally returned home, the world was already buzzing with news. Reports of the sudden superstorm spread rapidly, and journalists from every major network tried to understand what had happened. But the story that captured everyone's attention was not the storm itself. It was the strange fact that only one ship had remained strong through the chaos. Only one ship had rescued multiple crews, stabilized damaged vessels, and guided the entire fleet back to safety. The world wanted to know how a heavy human warship had outperformed some of the most advanced modern designs. Arham found himself standing at the center of this attention, though he had never sought fame. He watched news screens showing clips of his team working during the rescue. Interviews from foreign sailors described the fortress ship as a miracle in steel, a guardian during the storm, and the only hope when everything else failed. These words felt unreal to him. Just days earlier, the same people believed the human design was outdated and unnecessary. As the investigation reports came out, the global narrative shifted even more. Experts explained how the storm behaved unpredictably, breaking all simulation models. Predictive systems, which lighter ships relied on, failed completely. The ocean's violent force exposed every weakness in thin hulls and lightweight frames. Analysts admitted that modern trends had prioritized beauty, speed, and efficiency but had forgotten something basic: survival in worst-case scenarios. The human warship's design, once mocked, became the center of admiration. Its heavy armor, thick hull, reinforced engine supports, and multiple emergency backups were no longer seen as outdated. They were seen as intelligent decisions made through generations of experience with unpredictable environments. Arham noticed a strange sense of relief spreading through the global engineering community. Many foreign engineers realized that they had been too confident, too dependent on technology, and too certain that disasters could always be predicted. The storm humbled them, reminding everyone that the sea, not human intelligence, decides what happens. The aftermath brought dramatic changes. One by one, foreign nations requested access to the design philosophy behind human warships. They didn't want the exact same ship, they wanted the principles. They wanted to understand how to build vessels that could stand firm even when technology failed, when nature broke predictions, and when danger arrived without warning. Arham's team became instructors, advisors, and consultants for international engineers. Meetings that once felt tense and argumentative now felt respectful and collaborative. People listened carefully, took notes diligently, and asked thoughtful questions. The human engineers were no longer the strange ones who overbuilt everything. They were now recognized as experts in resilience. For Arham, this change felt like a victory that went deeper than any award or public praise. He remembered the lonely feeling of being doubted. He remembered the frustration of defending a design no one respected. He remembered the jokes, the sarcastic comments, the raised eyebrows. But now, when he walked through the engineering halls, those same people greeted him warmly. Some apologized, others thanked him, many simply looked at him with newfound respect. Still, Arham stayed humble. He knew the real credit belonged to the ship itself and the history that shaped it. Humans had built ships for centuries, facing storms, wars, and disasters that pushed them to innovate through necessity. Every layer of armor on the fortress represented lessons learned from pain, loss, and survival. Every backup system existed because someone long ago had experienced failure that almost cost lives. Every reinforced panel told a silent story of courage. The aftermath also changed Arham personally. He felt more confident, not because others praised him, but because he had seen his beliefs tested in the harshest way possible and proven right. He realized that standing strong for what you believe in is difficult, especially when the world disagrees. But sometimes, the world needs time and experience to understand the truth. Weeks later, a global conference was held to discuss strengthening naval safety standards. Representatives from dozens of nations attended. Arham sat among them, listening as experts presented their findings. One foreign commander stood on the stage and said something that touched Arham deeply. "We learned something important. In our race to build faster ships, we forgot why ships must be strong. Humans did not forget. Their fortress saved us because it remembered what the sea is truly capable of." The entire hall applauded. After the conference, Arham walked outside and sat alone near the harbor. The great human fortress was anchored nearby, towering peacefully above the water. Its gray steel reflected the warm light of the setting sun. To others, it was a warship. To Arham, it was a symbol of wisdom, courage, and legacy. He thought about his childhood, the mornings spent watching ships cut through the sea, the questions he asked his father, the dreams he carried into adulthood. He thought about the criticism he faced, the long debates, the tension, and the storm that changed everything. Now, looking at the ship, he felt grateful for every moment that had led him here. People often believed strength came from speed or advanced technology. They believed progress meant becoming lighter, faster, and more elegant. But Arham now understood something deeper. True strength comes from surviving the worst. True strength means being prepared for the unknown, even when others laugh at you for it. And that was the greatest lesson the moving fortress had taught the world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the water, Arham felt a quiet peace. The world no longer doubted human engineering. The world no longer mocked their philosophy. The world finally understood why humans built differently. But for Arham, the most important change was inside himself. He realized that resilience in ships, in engineering, and in people, was not about looking strong. It was about staying strong when everything else falls apart. He stood up slowly, taking one more look at the fortress that had proven its worth. He whispered softly, not as an engineer, but as someone who had witnessed the truth firsthand. When the world breaks, strength is the only thing that saves us. Then he walked away, knowing that the story of the moving fortress would be told for generations, and somewhere deep inside, he felt proud not just for what the ship had done, but for what it meant for the future, because now, humanity finally understood. Ships weren't just machines. They were promises built to protect life. No matter how fierce the storm,